post-millennial. John Fetterman admits Kamala's border bill would grant mass amnesty to illegal immigrants in the U.S. and not secure the border. Now, man, Joe Rogan doing some of the best work of his career, in my opinion. I mean, I love that he endorsed Donald Trump just recently, but in this video, he presses Fetterman, asks him, he says, you bring in illegal immigrants, you give them benefits, you give them a place to live, you put them in a swing state, then you grant amnesty, they're going to vote for you. Fetterman then hems and haws, blah, blah. Rogan asks him again, and then finally Fetterman says, it's undeniably true. Undeniably.
First Democrats saying, hey, though, we need...
Let me just jump to the end on this one.
Those states and turn them blue forever.
Well, I'm not really sure if that's what's in play. I think it's really it's important that we have to have an honest conversation.
But doesn't that seem logical, though? If you have a significant number of people that are being moved into swing states that have come across the border illegally, and then you've provided them with all these services, you provided them with food stamps, EBT, you've provided them with housing. You could, if you gave those people amnesty and allowed those people to vote, and it was very organized, you're talking about 75,000 votes over a few counties that switched everything over to the Republicans. You could see how you import 10 million people over the course of 4 years illegally, and then move a significant number of them to swing states, and then provide them with all these services, and then give them a path to citizenship. You could essentially rig those states.
Undeniably, immigration is changing our nation. I mean, I haven't spent a lot of time in Texas, but it's very clear that immigration has remade Texas, and I think it's for a good thing.
Now, it does cut off. I think it's fair to say he's not saying undeniably you are rigging those states.
Agreed.
He's saying undeniably immigration is reshaping the structure of these states like Texas.
It's called the Refugee Resettlement Program. It's run by the Department of Health and Human Services. You can Google it. It's on their website, on the HHS website. It's a real thing. And if you look at the numbers, I don't have them in front of me, but there are a lot of the blue states, or a lot of the purple states have seen 400% increase in refugees that have gone in. And so it's not something that's made up. Again, anyone can go to the Department of Health and Human Services website, and you just have to look for the Refugee Resettlement Program. It's a real thing. It is actually happening in the United States. And for any Democrats that deny it, I mean, you can present them with the website on HHS's site.
They're not denying it because they don't know, but this is what they always do. I think he got cut off at the end of that clip where he said, yeah, it's a good thing. But they always do this. They're like, no, it's not happening. It's not happening. And then they're like, okay, yes, it's happening, but it's a good thing.
Yeah,
that's what they always do.
That's true, but the average person, the average voter, right? The average, marginally informed person that has maybe a half an hour to an hour worth of news diet per week, they listen and they say, no, it's not happening. Just like Tim was talking about earlier with his friend that has about abortion. And I've had a lot of friends where I talk about the Second Amendment, and I'm like, look, they really do want to go after semi-automatic rifles. And they're like, no, they don't. And I show them Joe Biden saying we're coming for blah, blah, blah. And they're like, no, they don't. There's a lot of people that don't realize what the Democrats actually are pushing for or what the government is actually doing. And when you present them with this stuff, you can actually change people's minds. And it's hard work. I understand it's slow when you're dealing individually. But I mean, with a platform like we have here tonight, this is part of the reason why I really was hoping that Tim was going to bring this up, because I wanted to point out that HHS has a policy. This is real, and the government is actually doing it, and they're doing it on your dime. Now, I'm not big on saying the government is spending your tax dollars because modern monetary theory doesn't work that way, and et cetera. But essentially, the government is saying we're going to use federal money to change the electorate in states that will affect the results in the favor of the Democrats.
The real question that we should be asking is why is the border open? I mean, it's the most obvious 100%. Question in the world. 100%. Why was the border open? And to my mind, unless somebody can come up with a plausible fourth explanation, there are only three plausible explanations. One is exactly this, right? You want to ship in a bunch of people who you're then going to move around the country. You're going to change the demographic of the country so that people can vote who couldn't vote before, and you think that they share your values. Right? And people say that that's, a form of great replacement theory. That's stupid. Roy Teixeira, who's a left-wing theorist, had been basically claiming that this was the way the country was going to go, since the mid-2000s. There's nothing new about that. That's not That's not even an argument against it. It's just the description of reality. So you're either doing it because what you wish to do is add an entire new voting population, or two, you think that America bears some sort of bizarre blood guilt for its existence, and everyone is owed entry to the United States. And you do hear this in some of the more extreme circles of the left, this idea that your status as a refugee means you automatically are granted some sort of admission to the United States. Not that another country in between should take you. Right, that if you stop off in France and then you want to go to the U.S., you should be able to be let in the U.S. You shouldn't have to, attempt to gain citizenship in France or stop anywhere along the way. And there is that element to the left that basically says, you're the ones who took land and you moved the borders and now you expect people. So that does exist. And then there's the third group of people, or the third possible reason. And the third possible reason is if you build an entire economy on the basis of welfare economics and not producing any children, you need a new demographic base in order to support this giant governmental structure and unworkable labor system that you've created. And that is obviously true. I mean, the reality is that if you unionize all the labor in the United States, and if you then create a massive welfare system, who pays for all of this? Who pays for all this? You're not having any kids. Like the demographics in the United States are upside down, just as they are in pretty much every Western country. And that means that you're going to need to import a vast population of people. And when Democrats talk about people coming in, this is how they talk about them. They say, who's going to clean your I mean, it sounds racist. They'll say, like, who's going to clean your, who's going to pick your fruits and vegetables? And the people who were before this was happening, I assume. I mean, like,
I've read estimates that it's about 2.8 to 4 workers to pay for one Social Security recipient. So if that's the case,
it's moving toward 2. It's moving toward 2 to 1.
2 to 1?
2 to 1.
But that means without children, you need a labor force to come in to maintain the system.
The reasonable response to this is to have pro-family policies, which we don't have. Clearly, the Democrats are completely against any type of pro-family policies.
Well, I think that here we do have to distinguish between what I think politicians talk about as pro-family policies and what actually induces people to have more kids.
Fair.
So I think that both Democrats and Republicans have a record of talking about pro-family policies as though this means paid parental leave and greater tax subsidies for people who are having kids. And, some of that sounds fine to me. Like, listen, if you want to exempt me from taxes because I have 4 kids, I'm all for it. But here's the thing. I would have had 4 kids whether you exempted me from taxes or not.
Yep.
Because the real gap in the United States is not between people who are on the margin about having a kid and not because of economic circumstance. The real problem in the United States ain't nobody going to church. That's the real problem in the United States. You want people to have babies? The reason people have babies in modern society is because there is a religious obligation to have babies. This is the most robust social science finding that is available. You don't even need to do a study. Mormons have lots of kids. Religious Catholics have lots of kids. Orthodox Jews have lots of kids. Secular atheists have no kids.
Muslims have lots of kids.
Muslims have tons of kids, right? Why? Because it turns out when you believe that it is your job, like your function on this planet is to have kids and then raise them, then this is what you're going to do. And if not, it turns out kids are a giant pain in the ass and a waste of time and a huge economic expense. I mean, it used to be back in the olden days, they were labor for your farm, but nobody's doing that anymore. Now they're a giant expense. So exactly what is the upside of having kids when you could have a cute dog that you carry around in a purse or something?
That's right. God says, the first thing God says to man is be fruitful and multiply. Before sin even enters the world, God says be fruitful and multiply. It's the original purpose. From a religious point of view, the original purpose of man. But this incentive thing that you talk about is really important. The idea of government policy to incentivize people to have children. Seamus and I were actually talking about this before the show, that it's actually a left-wing point of view that essentially says that good spiritual fruit is born out of materialist seeds. That essentially we're good if the economics are there for us to be good. And reality always works exactly the opposite of that, right? That actually, in the long term for society, materialist success is born out of spiritual seeds. But I would say the fact that we changed all the economics around having a child are the reason that we now think that it is fundamentally an economic issue. It isn't fundamentally an economic issue, but there is an economic component, and we broke the economic component. It used to be that having children made you wealthier, and now having children makes you poorer, which obviously in a already spiritually distressed society does disincentivize people to have children.
100%. We were talking about this a few months ago, that people say, oh, it's too expensive to have kids, only because the market doesn't exist because people aren't having kids. Mm-hmm. So there are less people doing the job, driving prices up, and it becomes harder over time. But I agree about the religion component of people having kids. I also think there's a propagandistic component coming from Malthusians and liberals. And I think it's a trick and a lie. And shout out to you, Ben, for when you were talking about Chelsea Handler, how this is a woman who made a video where she says she wakes up she wakes up late, does drugs and masturbates, and she's never happier. And you were saying that woman is miserable. She's not happy. My response was, I think she's happier than a pig in shit. but she's going to be on her deathbed. She's going to be in a hospital when she's 79 or whatever. The doctor's going to walk into a dark, sterile room and say, Miss Handler, is there anyone I should call? And she's going to say no. And he's going to say, press the button if you need us. And he's going to leave her there. And that is a horror story for any human being.
That is a great point of view from a man who is not yet a father.
Soon to be.
Soon to be. It's true.
And God bless you for it. But you will discover, and it'll be fun to come on the show and talk about this in, say, 5 years. As has been said by wiser men than I, it is a great act of God's grace that he does not allow people without children to know what they're missing. And so it is, I do think that Chelsea Handler, does drugs and masturbates and is happy. I do believe that she's happy. She's happy within the maximal amount of happiness that she is capable of attaining to. And she is not even aware, because God is nice to people with no children and blinds them. She's not even aware that she hasn't even scratched the surface of human happiness. She doesn't know that her cup is like, it's like that funny moment in when I was a kid, before Dumbo, there were the little cartoons, and one of them was Mickey and the Beanstalk. You remember Mickey and the Beanstalk? And
the slices of bread.
Well, no,
there you go.
it's like that one, but it's the stairs. They get up, and there's this. They're in the giant land, right? And it's Mickey and the boys. They're in the land of the giants, and they come up to this giant wall. And they can hear the golden harp singing on the other side of the wall, so they attempt to scale the wall. And it's classic cartoon, I put my hands together and you step on my head, and you get up and then you reach down. They finally get up, and it takes all this effort, and they get up on top of the wall, and then they turn around and the camera zooms out, and it's not a wall at all. It was a step, but it was a giant step. And there are 100 more giant steps in front of them. And Chelsea Handler is standing at the top of that wall of happiness, looking down at the total amount of misery that she's even aware of, and she's up on top of it. She's like, I couldn't be happier. And when you have a child, you turn around and you go, there are 100 more steps of happiness that I did not even know were possible, and I will have to suffer to get up every one of those steps, because it's not easy to have a kid.
Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to watch the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Subscribe to this channel, and we will see you all there.